Hello, I'm Herman Cain. I am not a politician. I am a problem solver with over 40 years of business and executive experience, father of 2, grandfather of 3, and I'm here tonight because it's not about us, it's about those grandkids. Happy to be here in New Hampshire.
Mr. Cain, let me start with you tonight. And be as specific as you can. I hope I don't have to repeat this throughout the night. What would you do as President of the United States to create jobs?
The thing we need to do is to get this economy boosted. This economy is stalled. It's like a train on the tracks with no engine. And the administration has simply been putting all of this money in the caboose. We need an engine called the private sector. That means lower taxes, lower the capital gains tax rate to 0, suspend taxes on repatriated profits, then make them permanent. Uncertainty is killing this economy. This is the only way we're going to get this economy moving, and that's to put the right fuel in the engine, which is the private sector.
Mr. Cain, as somebody who has no elective experience,
yes,
this gentleman's question, if you were to become the nominee of this party,
yes,
and you associate yourself with the Tea Party, politics is about math. It's about coalition building. And a candidate who loses a mainstream Republican, as he describes himself, might not win this state in November, might not win a big state like Senator Santorum's Pennsylvania in November. Address the concern of the gentleman who seems to think that at least some people in the Tea Party, maybe in their dissatisfaction, their anger at the president, are too negative, too critical.
They're not too negative, they're not too critical. As a businessman, one of the first things that you do, which has allowed me to be successful throughout my career, is make sure you're working on the right problem. If we make sure we're working on the right problem, I will surround myself with the right people, and then we will put together the right plans that I'm going to take it to the people. I will be a president to do what's right, not what's politically right. And so if the other party disagrees, but the American people embrace those common sense solutions, that's how we get things done. So those experiences in the business world, managing large organizations with a very diverse constituency of the same skills that can help get the people involved and not exclude the people like this administration has done.
All right, I want to remind the candidates, and I want to let you in quickly on this one. As a businessman who says your strength in this campaign is someone who's created jobs, to the question of right to work.
Yes, I do believe that the states should have the right. I believe in right to work, and I hope that New Hampshire is able to get it passed. And I agree with the speaker and the others who believe that if the federal government continues to do the kinds of things that this administration is trying to do through the back door, through the National Labor Relations Board, that's killing our free market system. And the free market system is what made this economy great, and we have to keep the free market system strong.
All right, a lot more ground to cover with our candidates. Expect to get an answer, less government is better. One of the questions we want to explore tonight is when. When do you reach that extraordinary moment where the government might want to do something? Mr. Cain, I want to ask you, because you're a businessman who initially at least supported the TARP program. Former Senator Judd Gregg of this great state of New Hampshire was one of the architects of that program during the late hours of the Bush administration. And you said, quote, we needed to do something drastic because we were facing a very drastic situation.
I studied the financial meltdown and concluded on my own that we needed to do something drastic, yes. When the concept of TARP was first presented to the public, I was willing to go along with it. But then when the administration started to implement it on a discretionary basis, picking winners and losers, and also directing funds to General Motors and others that had nothing to do with the financial system, that's where I totally disagreed. The government should not be selecting winners and losers, and I don't believe in this concept of too big to fail. If they fail, the free market will figure out who's going to pick up the pieces.
Let's stay on this topic. Let's bring Tom Fahey back into the conversation. You worked in the business.
Yes.
You see the E. coli scare that's going on in Europe right now. You're trying to cut money. The FDA, other agencies are getting involved in that or in front of you. What do?
You look inside the FDA and determine whether or not it needs to be streamlined, and maybe it does.
But should the federal government be doing food safety inspections?
Federal government should be doing food safety, yes. But I want to go back to this point about what we need to do to help the housing market. We don't just have one problem. We have a crisis of the 3 E's. We've got the economy, entitlement spending, and energy. We've got to simultaneously work on all of those so we can put 13 to 14 million people back to work. That's what we've got to do. So it's not just a single issue. It is the multiplicity and the compounding effect of those 3 critical problems.
Speaker's point, Mr. Cain, was that if you've lost the American people, if they're not following you, you have to slow down until you can get them with you. Is that a fair point?
We don't need to slow down. I hate to tell you, I hate to be the one to give you the bad news, doctor. You're not going to get most of the money you put into Medicare if we don't restructure it. The reason we are in the situation we are today with Medicare and Social Security is because the problem hadn't been solved. We can no longer rearrange it. We've got to restructure those programs, and the Paul Ryan approach, I totally support. And he has been very courageous in taking the lead on this. And you know that commercial where they have demagogued the whole thing with Medicare and having grandma tossed off the bridge? If we don't fix this problem, it's going to be our grandkids in that wheelchair that they're going to be throwing off the bridge. We have got to fix the problem.
Let's continue the conversation on entitlements. I know Mr. Congressman Bachman wants to get in. Others want to get in. Let's go down to John DeStace on the floor.
Thank you, John. Mr. Cain, back to you. And while you're kind of fired up there, let's turn to Social Security. Could you be specific regarding ages, income levels? Everyone talks about reform. What is your specific Social Security reform plan in regard to raising the retirement age, at what ages, cutting benefits, and at what income level means testing kicking in? Thank you.
Let's fix the problem, and that is to restructure Social Security. I support a personal retirement account option in order to phase off the current system. We know that this works. It worked in the small country of Chile when they did it 30 years ago. Their payroll tax had gotten up to 27% for every dollar that the worker made. I believe we can do the same thing. That break point would be approximately 40 years of age. Now, young people realize they still got to contribute to the current system for those people that are on Social Security, that are near Social Security.
Retirement age going to be raised? Are you going to raise the retirement age as President of the United States?
I don't have to raise the retirement age because that by itself isn't going to solve the problem. If Congress decides to do that, that's a different matter. Let me give you one other example where this approach has worked. The city of Galveston, they opted out of the Social Security system way back in the 70s. And now they retire with a whole lot more money. Why? For a real simple reason. They have an account with their money on it. What I'm simply saying is we've got to restructure the program using a personal retirement account option in order to eventually make it solvent.
All right, we're going to keep the conversation moving.
While we're on the topic of faith and religion, the next question goes to Mr. Cain. You recently said you would not appoint a Muslim to your cabinet, then you kind of backed off that a little bit and said that you would first want to know if they are committed to the Constitution. You expressed concern that, quote, a lot of Muslims are not totally dedicated to this country. Are American Muslims as a group less committed to the Constitution than, say, Christians or Jews?
First, the statement was, would I be comfortable with a Muslim in my administration? Not that I wouldn't appoint one. That's the exact transcript. And I would not be comfortable because you have peaceful Muslims, and then you have militant Muslims, those that are trying to kill us. And so when I said I wouldn't be comfortable, I was thinking about the ones that are trying to kill us, number one. Secondly, yes, I do not believe in Sharia law in American courts. I believe in American laws in American courts, period. There have been instances, in New Jersey. There was an instance in Oklahoma where Muslims did try to influence court decisions with Sharia law. I was simply saying very emphatically, American laws in American courts.
So on that point, Governor Romney, let me come to you on this one. On that point, what Mr. Cain is saying that he would have, what my term, not his, a purity test or a loyalty test. He would want to ask a Muslim a question or a few questions before he hired them, but he wouldn't ask those questions of a Christian or a Jew.
Sorry, no, you are restating something that I did not say, okay? If I may, okay?
Let's make it clear.
When you interview a person for a job, you look at their work record, you look at their resume, and then you have a one-on-one personal interview. During that personal interview, like in the business world or anywhere else, you are able to get a feeling for how committed that person is to the Constitution, how committed they are to the mission of the organization.
But when I asked you this question the other night, though, you said that you would want to ask a Muslim those questions, but you didn't think you would have to ask them to a Christian or a Jew.
I would ask certain questions, John, and it's not a litmus test. It is simply trying to make sure that we have people committed to the Constitution first in order for them to work effectively in the administration.
Mr. Cain, deep dish or thin crust?
Deep dish.
Deep dish it is. Our 7 candidates for the Republican presidential nomination. We'll be right back. On that point, to voters out there for whom this is an important issue, let's try to quickly go through it. Let me start at this end. We'll just go right through. I'll describe it this way. Are you a George W. Bush Republican, meaning a constitutional amendment to ban same-sex marriage, or a Dick Cheney Republican, who, like I believe the Congresswoman just said, says this should be made, this decision, same-sex marriage, should be a state's decision?
State's decision.
If you become president of the United States, now gays are allowed to serve openly in the military. Would you leave that policy in place, or would you try to change it? Go back to don't ask, don't tell, or something else?
If I'd had my druthers, I never would have overturned don't ask, don't tell in the first place. Now that they have changed it, I wouldn't create a distraction trying to turn it over as president. Our men and women have too many other things to be concerned about rather than have to deal with that as a distraction.
Cain, another issue that's come up in recent years as this debate has bubbled up is the whole question of birthright citizenship. If there are 2 illegal immigrants, 2 adults who came into this country illegally, and they have a child, should that child be considered a citizen of the United States?
I don't believe so, but let's look at solving the real problem, okay? Immigration is 4 problems, not 1. This is why we keep kicking the can down the road. Secure the borders. Get serious about securing the borders. Number 2, enforce the laws that are already there. Number 3, promote the path to citizenship like this lady did by cleaning up the bureaucracy. And here's how we deal with the illegals that are already here. Empower the states to do what the federal government hasn't done, won't do, and can't do. Then we won't be getting into the problem that was raised. We are a compassionate nation. Of course they're going to get care, but let's fix the problem.
Well, Cain, take 30 seconds, please. Just give people who might say he's a businessman, he has no experience in government. How would you look at your responsibilities? Draw that line, vital U.S. national interest as Commander-in-Chief.
It starts with making sure that we understand the problem, which I don't think we did. We didn't have the intelligence. Number 2, is it in the vital interest of the United States of America? And if the answer is no, then we don't go any further. If it's not in the vital interest of America. To paraphrase my grandmother, with the situation in Libya and many of these other situations, they are not simple situations. It's a mess. It's just an absolute mess, and there's more that we don't know than we do know, so it'll be very difficult to know exactly what we do until, like others have said, we learn from the commanders in the field.
Hi, Mr. Cain. This one's for you. Public opinion polls consistently result in low approval ratings for Congress as a whole, and early polls show a lack of enthusiasm for this field of candidates. Most of you will say that you don't watch polls, but shouldn't you pay attention to public sentiment? And aren't these polls a direct reflection of what voters are and are not looking for?
Yes, I happen to believe that the polls do represent a barometer because it's way too early. Secondly, probably a lot of the people don't know us yet because it's still real early in the process. So as people get to know us more and more, I think they're going to find that this really is a good field of candidates, at least in my opinion. But the people that know the most about everybody up here, they don't see this as a weak field, and neither do I.
All right. Mr. Cain.
What I've learned is that all of these candidates up here share one thing in common, and that is it's not about us, it's about the children and the grandchildren. We're not that far apart on all of the big issues.